them is already inactive right now. So we'll get.
Yeah, but he's coming back though. Here's the thing, Maniac. That's an angle we can spin into that angle now, because there's something else. Even before, funnily enough, I actually didn't know he was in Katowice. Even before that interview at the end, where he just did announce that after the major he's coming back. If people don't know, Simple says he's coming back. Now here's, because he's hilarious and Simple, he didn't even think he needed to let us know, will it be in Na'Vi? But I'm going to assume, listen, this is where it's bad news if you're actually anyone not called Simple, because I actually think Wonderful's playing great. By the way, I think he could play great. He could even be the MVP of every event from now on. The problem is, unless he literally wins the major with like a 1.8 rating, he's going to be replaced by Simple if Simple decides I'm coming back. You know what I mean?
Duncan, you're missing the real idea. The real idea is to have Simple come back as a hybrid and not as a main AWPer.
Oh, I know he hinted that. Which, by the way, here's the thing: that also wouldn't actually be that terrible if you consider how powerful rifles are now.
Great.
I even think there's a world where this will tie into what I was going to say actually, which is I already hoped that Simple seeing Ziwu win Player of the Year would already make him like, wait a minute, how long am I really taking off here? I've got to get back in the game, you know, like this guy's taking like the records. But I also hope that him seeing Donk just made him think like, I've got to get back in this game, mate. Like, because the other thing you have to realize, and this is a key point I want to make, is I also do think there's like two parts to being an all-time great player. This will sound a bit weird, which goes like this. There's the part that you do where you're at your peak and you can just win as many championships as you can. But I also think it's actually quite key at the end to not retire when you're on top. The reason why you don't retire when you're on top is because ideally the dream is you still get a couple of years on the calm down, where what you do is you use like your experience and the fact that you're like battle tested on stage to just deny a bunch of the up-and-comers who one day will be your rival in history. You've got to deny them a few crowns, you know what I mean? You've got to, like, for example, he's already done this to Zero once. You've got to come back and sort of take one of his when he would, you know, he was number 2. We all would have given him what you got to do that, but you got to play defense as well. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I want to see Simple back.
And the problem that I have about in this conversation, because it's a thought process that I already had. The problem that I have is I don't know if Simple is ready to come back and not be one of the 5 best players in the world. Because, you know, that's a question. I mean, listen, I'm never going to stand here and doubt what he can do. I think he's given us way enough evidence to prove that whenever he's really applying himself, he's at the very, very top. But first of all, let's not pretend like he was one of the best players in the world when he stopped the game.
Oh,
he wasn't. Not at all. He was not in that conversation anymore when he stopped. And now he stopped for a very long time. And not only is obviously Ziwu continuing on these tracks, but now Donk is coming around the corner and is fucking destroying everybody and putting every kind of record you can have on one event and put it all in one big packet, put a bow on it. So if you are Simple right now, do you have it in you to swallow the humble pill and come back and try and work your way back to being the best again? That is the question that I have for him. And how would he handle not being at the very top and just grinding through it? You know, like grinding, having a project, because that's the statement that I made when Na'Vi went international. Obviously, I thought it was an incredible gambit to be put together. But anyway, I said, we have to realize that this could actually mean the end of Simple. Not because he wouldn't, as an individual, be one of the best in the world, but because we've already established that in order to win trophies, the one-man game doesn't exist anymore. And I'm just going to put Donk between fucking accolades right now because we're going to touch on it at some point. But in order to win actual big trophies, you can look at any of the team that have won in the last 5 to 6 years. You're not doing a one-man show anymore. That doesn't exist. So you can make the argument that in Na'Vi he wasn't set up to have success. That would have taken a time for this lineup to maybe never win a trophy at all. That's very possible. But so what? He comes back. He comes back in Na'Vi. He doesn't have a trophy-winning team at all. That hasn't changed. Just Simple coming back now to Na'Vi doesn't make Na'Vi a trophy-winning team. So where are we actually? We're back at the same point as we were prior to him taking his break, in a new game with better players. The only thing that might have changed and that would play in his favor would be that he is mentally recharged, he's refreshed, his resilience is at the very top, he knows what he wants, and he's ready for all the challenge. That would be the biggest difference maker, because at the end of his stint in CS2, at the beginning of CS2, he definitely didn't have it in him anymore. He just said, you know what, I need time for myself. I don't want to play this game. And I respect that. I respect that he didn't lose anybody's time, he didn't lose anybody's money, but just being there, not doing anything. You might as well just say that. But it's not like the situation has changed drastically. If anything, the only item in this equation that could have changed is himself. And if he himself has a different sort of take and perspective on the game, and if he's ready to have this grinding mindset, then yeah, of course, let's open the conversation. But I'm not going to stand here and pretend like he's going to come back and immediately be in grand finals because he's got a trophy-winning team by his side. That's just not the case.
I mean, it's certainly one thing I think people don't factor in. Like, the reason why actually the way he took that break was almost clever from a PR angle is, like, spoiler guys, he wasn't going to turn it around in CS2 and win Player of the Year anyway. But actually, by going like, well, that's like I sort of chose to leave the game. It makes it not seem like quite as bad, right? Because everyone even said at the end of the year, like, we just didn't play the game anymore. But I agree with you. If you actually look, even though his last tournament was obviously that Pro League run at the end of CS:GO where they made the finals, guys, if you watch that, like, maybe that tournament he was pretty good, but he'd had a pretty rough summer. Like, a lot of people have forgotten because of CS2 that, like, s1mple and FaZe were the big names that were falling off in the world at the time. Like, they were kind of shocking, both like relative, obviously, to what the individual and the team levels. Like, it was kind of shocking. These were the people we just assumed would always be good and had the crazy flaw. But I'm with you, actually. No one knows where he'll be at as a player. And then also, there's that whole thing, like you say, because I'll tell you what, even though it's not as bad as at the beginning of CS2, the whole AWP thing still hasn't really been figured out. Like, I actually don't know right now, especially after seeing how Donk plays, if it would even be the right move to just go back and be the primary AWPer. Like, maybe actually s1mple could make it work with the rifle mate, because it depends what his role in the team's going to be, you know.
Well, that's obviously easy for me to say what he should do, and I'm just talking out of my ass right there. But I do think that, consider if he wanted to come back to Na'Vi, I think it might be a better move to be hybrid and leave Wonderful in that position, which I think is doing a pretty decent job.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually low-key think he's being a little bit underrated.
He
also
is,
because they don't have deep runs, so why would we ever? But when you actually look at him play, he's really got something.
Yep.
Not anywhere near top level s1mple with the AWP, right? But that's besides the point. I still think it would be a win for s1mple to have a bit more movement in his game, to run around with the rifle, to be as aggressive as the way he likes to. If you remember, the way s1mple used to play when he was on one was super aggressive. Not stupid aggressive, but super aggressive. Like, holy hell, always an ability to know where is my next frag. I'm going to get this guy, and then this is my pathway to the next guy, and I'm going to go straight there. This is what Donk's doing with the rifle. That's exactly what Donk's doing with the rifle. Like, a super high propensity for duels, to go in and make the difference. Just do that with the rifle. Be able to pick up the AWP whenever you want, here and there, when you feel like it. But don't be shackled by a gun that maybe you don't really dominate or master anymore right now, and then have your confidence completely shut down. As far as I'm concerned, right now, there's only really m0NESY that has completely figured out the AWP.
Yes.
I would put ZywOo a step below m0NESY, purely in terms of, like, expert rifle. I still think ZywOo is a better player than m0NESY. But in purely expert role, I think m0NESY is above. He's the only one that seemingly hasn't been harmed by the change of pattern for the gun, the change of behavior for the gun, and he was able to translate that to his play style, which is lightning fast, very movement based as well, very combat style. Like, m0NESY has that. The rest is kind of playing catch up. Broky's playing catch up. s1mple's had a very rough time. Jame, it's a little different because I feel like because of the way he plays,
the only two that I would have even said as a counter would probably be Shiro and Jame, and they're the most passive AWPers of all time. Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about, like, the AWP that you mean when, like, the whole point is the reason we all said s1mple and ZywOo have to be the AWPers is because they could actually be aggro and just dominate the game with it. Yeah, I agree. No one does that. Like, I actually think the s1mple's angle, by the way, is probably slept on. A lot of people were blaming him, Katowice, during the event. It's like, mate, not a lot of people, like you say, where are all the big AWPers popping off? Like, by the way, he did get it going in that playoff series. Like, he got it rolling eventually. Yeah, I agree with you. The AWP in general has been somewhat, like, nerfed. It's just everyone's kind of been a bit quiet about it. We're just blaming all the players. Probably m0NESY's making them all look bad, like you say.
I mean, I don't really know if it's just... I mean, there's probably an argument to be made about m0NESY playing the shit out of CS2, like having an incredible amount of hours and just grinding the game days in, day out. And you got to respect that as well. And then it just matched perfectly with his play style. But yeah, I'll give that to him. But for s1mple, to circle back to our conversation, I think it would ease in his, like, returning to the game if he actually would do it as a hybrid with a very potent sniper whenever he decides to. You give him some breathing room as well. You don't shackle him. That's what I would do, in my very humble opinion. Because I also believe that if you look at this Na'Vi roster, and if the premise of the conversation is that he's going to come back to Na'Vi, I think removing Wonderful would be a mistake.
Put it this way, if I go one step further, the obvious player would probably be Ima, right? We'll probably remove him and put s1mple and put him on a rifle. Probably. By the way, I actually think, if you want to make the point you said before, the issue you have if you replace Wonderful is Wonderful's doing a very good job and he's actually doing the role right. So you're right, if you replace him for s1mple, even if s1mple's really good, you haven't fixed anything else in the team. The obvious reason why if you could take him out is actually everyone else in the team sort of got it together in their role. So suddenly, the joke is, actually, if s1mple's on a rifle and Wonderful's still up, maybe you do have a championship winning team then.
Well, and maybe you would give Bit his mojo back, right? I don't know.
True,
Maybe having
also.
Simple next to him, that would
Yeah.
mean something. Because I think JL, if you consider the role that he's got, I
It
think he's
seems like
doing
he
what
does
he
a good
needs
job,
to.
mate. Yeah.
He's doing
What
what he
people
needs
don't
to
know
do.
is this. You know this, Maniac. I don't. People can say anything they want to me on Twitter. If they actually do a good job in the server, mate, I'm not going to just go, they're bad in the game. Like, what people don't get is this. It's actually even something I build into how I insult you. Because my whole take, it's like I used to tell Nico back in the day when he would actually come literally in bars and after parties and try and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I would tell him, mate, no, it's the other way around. You're just a guy who is paid because you're really good at wiggling your wrist. So shut the fuck up, have a drink and wiggle your wrist, and I'll stick to the thinking and talking, mate. Like, I don't worry about that. Listen, you might be great in the game. The whole point is I'll just roast you for the out of the game shit. But no, I agree with you. I actually think in that team, by the way, I'm even with you. I actually think the whole team's got the wonderful factor. The real issue is because they're Na'Vi and they don't win and don't go to the final and they don't have Simple. That makes people write them off and go, who cares? But if you actually look, I actually think everyone except Imma actually is doing a good job in their role. I think Alexi B's doing a pretty good job. I think actually I agree with the jail actually frags quite a lot, especially considering he's not in like the greatest fucking roles. And then I do think Wonderful's killed the game actually. Bits a bit more up and down, but even he's had some good tournaments. You know, it seems like he's gotten used to CS2 a little bit. The only one I feel is Imma is the problem child, unfortunately. It's why, if you notice, here's what worries me. Haven't you noticed, guys, that every time he has a good half or a round, we all go crazy? That's a bad sign. That's a bad sign. If you're actually really that good, we wouldn't be doing that. Like it's like we all want to believe is the thing. I wanted to believe after that game of Legion run. The problem is not everyone makes the jump, as it were. You know that. Like, not everyone can make the jump up to the bigger team. Maybe too much pressure. Maybe it's the wrong team. Who knows? Who knows what it is, right?
It's tough to say. At this point, it's assumption. But from talking with the guy here and there, having a few interviews and listening to what he was saying, I do think there's probably an element of like pressure and psychology where the jump was probably a little bit too hard to make, and then it can be like a vicious cycle where you are very aware of how you're not delivering when you should be delivering, which makes you deliver less, which makes you overthink it. You know, you can be trapped in that sort of...
This might sound weird, Maniac, but when I had this guy on a show and I talked to him a little bit before the show, I know this will sound like a strange thing to say, but you know as a competitor what I mean. It actually scared me a bit, mate, that he sounded too humble. That's actually... Because unfortunately, that makes me worried in this scenario, that the pressure's getting to you or you don't want too much responsibility. Because I was hoping what would actually happen was, because I saw how he played at the major, I wanted him to sort of be almost like a hot shot and come in like, hey, I'm the shit. Like, you know, I am the next best player. Like, put me on it. Give me a team like Na'Vi. I'd fucking dominate. Unfortunately, I get worried that actually I've felt like the whole time in Na'Vi, maybe he's the person that's gotten to the most, you know, because I do think, I mean, obviously he had crazy expectations because even though it's just one run, dude, he almost was the MVP of that major. So, like, in our brains, that's what we expect. That the joke is we almost want him to be like Romanian donk or whatever. Like, it's kind of wild, actually, how we're treating this guy.
Yeah, it's fair. I also think that out of all the players in Na'Vi, when the roster was put together and Simple was still on it, he probably was one of the most affected by Simple's moods, like mood swings up and down, and the climate. You know, I like the use of corrosive as a term that you were saying, and how it can sort of transpire and then leak into other people. And not everybody is equipped to deal with that. Like, some people don't get affected by it. Some people keep on doing their shit, and that doesn't matter. I always picture in my mind, like, the reason why Electronic and Simple was such a good duo is that Simple could do whatever the fuck. Electronic would just be stone cold and playing his game, like, as if nothing was happening to his left, doesn't matter. It felt to me, and that's, again, assumptions, but just from looking at them playing, that I think Imma might have been affected by it quite a lot, by the climate that was created. And then this could have been the first sort of trip down the stairs. And then after that, he has a few games here and there, and we all jump on it. Like you said, like, we're so hungry for good games whenever it happens, we just feast on it, like, oh my God, yes, it's happening. But over time, it does feel like the consistency isn't there, or at least not at the level that we were hoping for. That's just, we gotta acknowledge it.
Like the meme reference point, if someone's old school enough in CS, because everyone will know what I mean when I say if you were there, is, look, this is an extreme example. Imma isn't on this level, but everyone knows back in the day, if Anders ever tweeted like, Marklov's back, that just meant that, like, Marklov had like one halfway opt a few people. You know what I mean? It didn't even mean he was like great. It's just that the point is, obviously, that's the ultimate example of where someone's like an old great player from a past game and you just want so badly for them to be good now, and you're like, please, but like, it just doesn't happen enough. So as a result, you really do just go crazy when they do anything in the game.
I know.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.